Hello and welcome to another Watcher of Realms video, and in this video I am going to be talking about the changes that have been made to Lucius, how they have affected him and his kit when it comes to primarily his main usage around those changes, which is going to be in Guild Boss 2 against Semrah Boss, and honestly just the lack of changes when it comes to how the Semrah Boss actually works in the first place, and whether this just feels like a really bad feeling when it comes to getting what should be a really highlight character. I think over the weekend we had obviously Anora and then the Lucius, Boreas and Ares banner, and I think honestly Lucius was a bigger hype character than Anora was that weekend. I think I saw more people talking about Lucius than Anora. Obviously most people do have AoE mages already. Anora is a nice AoE mage, but Lucius is adding something that isn't in the game currently when it comes to the spells, you know, removing buffs from enemies. And against Semrah on the phase 2, his Aegis mode, this would be amazing. And this is obviously where a lot of people would have been like, I want to pick up this character to use him there, and everything's gone wrong. And here is the information on the update that did occur to Lucius, and I'll just read through this. And it says, we noticed that Lucius, Oblivion's Edge, had issues with dispelling buffs consistently when challenging Titanic Ruins, the weekly new guild boss. To provide a better gaming experience, we have decided to improve the stability of Lucius' dispelling ability and enhance its usability. The adjustments are as follows. Exorcism, before, it loads the weapon with the sanctified bolts, increasing damage by 30% for 20 seconds. Basic attacks and pursuits deal extra 120% damage one time. First 4 pursuits will dispel 1 buff from the target upon hit. When activated, dispels all damnations inflicted, and the hero won't be inflicted with damnation during the ultimate. So that's what it was like previously. It would periodically remove buffs. And I think what most people thought when they read this was, let's say the Aegis had stacked up to 4 times, he could remove all 4 of these buffs, and then when the boss did their Aegis again, it would add a new buff, and he'd have to get his ultimate back in time to start removing those buffs in time. However, the way the actual buffs work on the new Guild Boss 2 is not like this, and obviously this is the way why the changes come in, because in my opinion Semrah is effectively bugged in how he gives himself Aegis. Is if you remove those 4 buffs, which he was doing absolutely fine previously, when he does that 5th Aegis, instead of giving himself 1 extra Aegis buff, and remember he does the Aegis buff 2 times in every damage cycle, the Earth Shatter, so he'll give himself 2 Aegises in every cycle. He is actually just giving himself the next tier and all the tiers before. So if it's the 3rd time he's done it, he would do 3 buffs. If it's the 4th time he's done it, he'll give himself all 4 buffs, even if he's got none left because they've all been dispelled. So Moonton decided this next change is what's going to make the difference and actually help in the situation. And I will just straight up say right now, it does not make any difference really at all. It says loads the weapon with sanctified bolts, increasing damage by 30% for 20 seconds. Basic attacks and pursuits deal an extra 120% damage one time. This is the same as it was before. But the second part says the next basic attack dispels up to 5 buffs from the target upon hit. When activated, dispels all damnations inflicted, and the hero won't be inflicted with damnation during the ultimate. So the change is the yellow text, which means that instead of him having to hit pursuits to just do 1 dispel, and he can do that up to 4 times, the first 4 pursuits would dispel 1 buff, he'll now just instantly remove 5 buffs. But it doesn't really matter if he just instantly removes 5 buffs, because the next time Aegis does the buff, it would give him up to 6 if it was the 6th tier or above. And this is happening pretty much whenever you use it. And like I said, because he does Aegis twice in a cycle, if you remove the first one, he will always give himself the buffs on the next one. So you have to wait for the second one. And because you're sitting there waiting with your ultimate, a lot of the times he goes into damnation, and you can't use his ultimate to remove the buffs anyway. So I think they probably obviously need to fix Semrah and the way Semrah works, because he's just broken when it comes to him giving himself buffs. It's pretty obvious. I think the majority of people who have played the game for a long time will kind of understand. If you've played games before, it's the same way when it comes to removing buffs. They don't give themselves all stacks again. It would be pretty difficult as it stands because a boss could still get 2 stacks without you being able to remove it, which is pretty significant damage. But right now what can happen is when you get onto tier 6, you can remove the buff and then he can just reapply the buff like 2 seconds later. You get like about a 6-second window where he buffs himself the second time with Aegis and then doing the Earth Shatter to actually destroy your team. Now I have actually noticed a really strange secondary bug with this. Even if you manage to time it perfectly and manage to dispel the second Aegis so that it removes it, so it goes down to 1 buff for his Earth Shatter, it doesn't seem to be actually reducing the damage from a tier 6 Aegis down to a tier 1 Aegis. It seems to still be doing the sort of damage that he would be doing if he had all 6 stacks. And I have taken some screenshots of a recent run that I did. You can see with the time left in the top left hand corner how far progressed this is through the fight. This first screenshot is the very first Earth Shatter that the boss does where he has no Aegis buff. So this is a really good kind of gauge on where the damage is. This is the amount of damage my team is going to take. You can see the numbers. It ranges from 5k to on Torador, my tank, up to 13k on my more like flimsier characters, as you can see on the right hand side. Now if I go to the second screenshot, you can see this damage increases because he has 3 stacks of Aegis. This makes complete sense. I'm absolutely fine with this. This is why the dispel is really important, because you want to remove these buffs to stop your team from taking as much damage, but also so you can do more damage to the boss, because it does actually increase his defensive stats, making it harder to hit him as well. And you can see, like I said, Torador is now taking 6.7k, and my weaker characters are taking up to 16,000 damage in the top right hand corner, as you can see. Now this is where it gets bizarre. As you can see, I took this screenshot right at the end of the fight, so this would be where he's got tier 6 Aegis. This means that he's going to be giving himself 6 stacks. I did dispel 5 of those stacks, so now he has 1, and this should be doing less damage than he would be doing if he had 3 stacks. But as you can see, it is doing way more. The 6.7k that it was doing on Torador is now doing 10k, and the 16,000 that it was doing on my weaker characters is now doing 23k. So it doesn't even look like these dispels are even working. It's just a visual removal of the actual buff. He's still got the actual damage buff from the stacks, regardless of if you remove them or not. And this would also mean he's still got the defense buffs from those stacks too. So you're not even doing extra damage against the boss either. Semrah is absolutely busted on this phase when it comes to Aegis stacks, especially if you think you can take in Lucius and make it work in any way possible. I think the way they've changed Lucius doesn't really make any difference, so they could even just keep it the way it is. Semrah needs some massive fixes. He's all over the place if it comes to wanting to try and dispel the buffs. If you're just going to try and do pure damage or true damage to get through the Aegis stage, you're probably not going to really notice anything. Because you're not dispelling buffs, you're going to still take the maximum amount of damage that you could take at every phase. And also, obviously, you're going to do the same sort of damage regardless, but you're trying to take advantage of things like true damage on certain characters. That's absolutely fine. This is just a massive problem if you are trying to utilize Dispel, and even if you do hit the Dispel in great timing, it doesn't even seem to work. So some big fixes are going to be needed for Semrah by the looks of things for sure. Hopefully they manage to fix the Dispel issue and the lack of it removing the actual buff itself. That would be nice in itself, but also maybe changing how the stacks work. I think it adding 1 stack every time, or maybe he could start adding 2 stacks as he gets to, you know, a higher tier. So it does make it more difficult. So if he gets to, let's say, tier 6, he's adding 2 tiers of Aegis every time. I think just completely buffing him out to 6 stacks straight away is just kind of balked, honestly. I've played games and MMOs and everything for decades, and no game has ever worked this way for me. Dispelling buffs means the buff is gone. The character can obviously reapply stacks. That's how it always works. Not completely reapply the buff to the max stacks you've just removed. This is just doesn't work this way. And this is why they've done the fix to try and do a hot fix to fix the situation. Then this is why they've done this update to do a hot fix to hopefully amend this situation, but it just has done nothing, unfortunately. Especially with seemingly it just being a visual dispel anyway. Hopefully Moonton prioritize this. They have actually been doing some pretty good updates in the past and getting on top of things quite quickly. This is a brand new addition to the game, a brand new character. People were really hyped for Lucius. They want to utilize him to how he should be utilized. Fingers crossed. Hopefully everything works out and the boss gets kind of fixed sooner rather than later. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video.